Okay, so I think we are ready to get started. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. So welcome everyone to the AICPA's CPA Evolution, What Aspiring CPAs Need to Know webcast. This is exclusively available to our AICPA student affiliate members, which is just one of the perks you get as a member. I'm Lauren Walter, your moderator for today. I'm a communications manager with the AICPA exams team based out of the AICPA's New Jersey office. In today's presentation, we'll be sharing with you the proposed direction for the CPA exam and licensure process that'll take effect in January 2024, when many of you who are tuning in today may be planning to test. Okay, next slide. Awesome, thank you. Now, as a reminder, like I said before, you had to be an AICPA student affiliate member to attend this event, so we want to thank you for joining us. In addition to accessing live and on-demand webinars for free like this one, we wanted to highlight a few additional benefits you have access to as a member. These include expanding your professional network by 400,000 by being part of the AICPA, gaining access to apply for exclusive AICPA student affiliate member scholarships to help pay for your studies and receiving exclusive discounts on select publications and resources. And now to learn more about the complete list of benefits that you get as a student member, visit thiswaytocpa.com/join. All right, next slide. Thank you. Now, before we get started, just a few housekeeping items to go over. First, today's presentation will be recorded and you'll receive a link to access it within the next couple of days. So also within that email that you'll get will be links to various CPA exam resources to help you get started along with your CPA journey. Second, we encourage active discussion throughout, so please feel free to submit your questions to us using the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom menu. Members of our team are on hand, ready to monitor and respond to your questions, and you can upvote others' questions as well by clicking on the thumbs up icon. I'll be monitoring the Q&A box throughout also and may pass along some of your questions to our presenters as we pause throughout to take questions. And just a note, please try to keep all questions relevant to today's topic. Regarding the chat box, please only use the chat box to report any technical issues you may be encountering. Otherwise, we really won't be monitoring the chat box. To keep things a little more interactive today, we'll be launching poll questions to you throughout the presentation. So we encourage you to keep an eye out for those and respond when prompted. And a note, do not submit your poll question response in the Q&A or chat box. You can respond directly in the separate poll question pop-up window that appears. You'll be prompted. And finally, at the conclusion of today's webcast, you'll be prompted to take a really quick survey, just a few questions. This is to let us know what you thought of today's presentation. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, and it helps shape the format and content discussed in future presentations. So please take a minute or two to fill it out. We'd really appreciate it. Now to quickly summarize, yes, you'll get a recording of today's presentation, submit your questions in the Q&A box, keep an eye out for poll questions, and please take the brief survey at the end of this webcast. All right, moving on to our next slide. Your presenters for today. So with that said, let's move on and introduce your presenters for today. We have Lori Kelly and Bimpy McMillan, who will each share a little about themselves. Lori, Bimpy.
Sorry, I was muted there. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lauren, for introducing us. I'm happy that you all have taken some time out of your day to learn more about CPA Evolution. A little bit about myself. I am a lead content manager on the AICPA's exams team. I work primarily on developing content for the FAR section of the exam. My background, I was an audit manager with KPMG in their Philadelphia office. And then I moved in and spent a few years in business and industry doing some technical accounting work and some SEC reporting work before joining the AICPA about 8 years ago. I also am very involved with the research that we're doing to update the CPA exam to be aligned with the CPA Evolution licensure model. So we're going through and doing a lot of research, which I'll share some of the results with you and kind of what to look out for and what to expect when that exam launches in 2024. Bimpy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Bimpy McMillan. I'm glad to be here with you all today and thankful you all took the time to join us today. I'm a technical reviewer in the peer review department at the Texas Society of CPAs. So a little bit more about my background. I was born and raised in Nigeria, and that's where I obtained my bachelor's degree in accounting back in 2006. And then I moved to the United States in 2009 to obtain my master's degree in accounting from Abilene Christian University in West Texas. And so my first job was with a bank in Abilene, Texas as an audit and compliance analyst. And so I did a lot of IT audit. And then I got my second job with a public accounting firm, Weaver and Tidwell, here in Dallas, Texas. And so I moved over to Dallas, Texas back in 2012. I worked in public accounting for about 3 years as a senior auditor. And after that, I ventured into the world of private equity accounting. And so I worked for an investment banking firm for a little bit in their investment accounting department. I did that for about 2 years. And now I currently work with the Texas Society of CPAs doing peer reviews. And basically what I do is audit the work of the auditors of audit firms. I became a CPA back in 2015 after a 5-year journey of taking the CPA exams. And I'm happy to be here today and share a lot about CPA Evolution with y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori and Bimpi. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here today. So just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. First, why CPA? Because many of you are still, in school, maybe making that decision whether you want to pursue the CPA or not. Then what the evolving role of CPAs looks like. It certainly doesn't look like what it looked like 30, 40 years ago, or even 5 or 10 years ago. It's continually evolving. Then why CPA evolution, with everything changing so rapidly. Then what's changing with CPA evolution, which is probably the big question you guys have, and how will it affect you when you test? Then some common FAQs that we've already heard as we've started the evolution process. And finally, how you guys as aspiring CPAs can start preparing even now. And then we'll end with some Q&A with our presenters. Okay, next slide. I believe we are ready for our first poll question. So I know majority of you who are tuned in today are probably students, still thinking about it, but we want to know how likely at this point are you to pursue the CPA. So feel free to put your responses in. Give you about 10, 15 more seconds, and then we'll show the results. Help us gauge kind of where you're at in the process. Okay. Won't let you answer the poll. Uh-oh. Not able to answer. We're having some technical issues here. I'm seeing a few people commenting that they're not able to answer. Okay, I'm seeing that, guys. All right, I guess that's common. I'm sorry for that technical issue, guys. We'll try to get it worked on the back end, on our end. We have a few more poll questions that hopefully we'll have that resolved by the time we get to the next one. So if you want, feel free to put into the chat, if you're thinking, where you're at in the process, since we weren't able to get that poll question answered. In the meantime, we're going to get started and start with, why CPA?
Bimpi?
All right, go ahead. All right, hi everyone. So let's dive into the first topic of this presentation, why become a CPA? So on this slide, we're going to discuss why even go ahead and pursue a CPA? So as you all know, or if you don't know already, accountants are the backbone of the business world. And so a lot of businesses exist to generate revenue or generate income. And even those who don't generate revenue or who don't exist to make profits, like not-for-profit organizations, they still need revenue to maintain their operation. So all these businesses need accountants, most especially CPAs, to help keep their business running. And so according to the DOL, and DOL is the Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a CPA license improves your job prospects, and they project that the employment of accountants and auditors are going to grow by 7% within the next 10 years. And so overall, the demand for the expertise of CPAs will remain strong well into the future. And so here are some benefits of becoming a CPA that I've experienced in my profession over the years. So first of all, there's a lot of demand. So there are more positions than skilled accountants available to fill them up. And so as organizations are becoming more and more globalized, the need for skilled accountants, especially those with diverse backgrounds and experiences, is only going to continue to grow. Earning potential. I mean, I know that, yes, some people say they're not here to make money, but it's all part of being in the CPA profession. Those who work with money bring home a good amount too. And so according to the 2017 Robert Half salary guide, junior level accountants in large firms make between $69,000 to $90,000 per year. And that's as a junior accountant. And those with more experience make far more than that. We're talking 6 or even 7 figures. Becker, the CPA professional resource guide, did an earnings study that shows that CPAs can earn between 5% and 15% more than their non-credentialed counterparts over a full career. And so when they did that over a full career to retirement, that could mean an additional $1 million or more in earnings over your lifespan in your career. Flexibility. We're now in this phase where everyone is talking about, work-life balance, and that's a priority for a lot of accounting firms. And so according to an article by the New York Times, big accounting firms, and when I say big accounting firms, usually the big 4 accounting firms, have done the math and seen that creating better work-life balance for employees is financially beneficial. Plus, much of the work CPAs do can be done from anywhere, which makes managing life and deadlines much easier and helps prevent burnout, which we've heard a lot, especially when you're in the public accounting realm. And so during the pandemic, for example, for myself, I've had the flexibility of working from home for over 1.5 years. And more recently, we finally switched to a more hybrid schedule where we only go into the office 2 days a week, and 3 days a week we're working from home because, we've realized that a lot of what we do can be done from home. And so that's given a lot of us the flexibility to pursue other things we need to do, take care of kids or run errands and all that, to just give you more of a healthier lifestyle in general. So it does make for a productive lifestyle, and it does create more time for you to pursue other personal goals. Opportunities, we talk a lot about opportunities. You prove yourself and the sky's the limit. CPAs hold everything from entry-level jobs to CFO positions, and more opportunity to focus on the aspects of your job that interest you, because there's so much you can do as a CPA, depending on what route you take. Promotions come on a regular basis, and you can always go into a lot of variety of fields, which I'm going to discuss very soon. Possibilities. Accountants do many different things in every industry. CPAs work in every industry under the sun. There's so many areas you can delve into when you become a CPA: management accountant or a consultant, forensic accountant, which is what my mom was, CFO, external auditor, internal auditor, information systems auditor, financial planner. You can work in wealth management, government accounting, tax accountant, risk advisory, education, as a professor or conducting research, corporate accountant. So whatever you're into, whether it's food, photography, football, there's a professional accountant who accounts for all of that. That means if you decide as an accountant that you want to mix things up, or you get tired of one industry, there's always another industry or position that's ready to welcome you with open arms. I'll use myself as an example. I've explored a variety of industries that has only helped grow my skills and network. I started as a bank, as an IT auditor. I ventured into private equity accounting, worked in public accounting, and I work for the professional organization for CPAs in Texas, which is a not-for-profit organization. So because I got to experience a lot of industries, I was able to narrow down the industries I love the most, and those that were my least favorite. And I also got to understand what type of CPA I wanted to be. It was then that I discovered I simply just love auditing. I love investigation. And that's why, and there's so many different parts of investigation, and I happen to work in the peer review portion of audits. So on the next slide, as businesses across the country are making critical operational decisions and pivoting their focus, they're turning to who? CPAs to help guide them with forecasting, cash flow analysis, revenue, and so much more. So we all know we're currently in a unique environment following the pandemic. We have all seen the impact COVID has made on businesses over the past year. And this has even increased the demand for CPAs more. So for example, when the government came out with the Payment Protection Program, the PPP program for self-employed individuals and small businesses, these organizations look to who to help them navigate the process? CPAs. And so CPAs were, while other businesses were kind of struggling, CPAs were in more demand during the pandemic because of the relief funds that came in, and how to account for it, how to do the reporting accordingly, and all of that stuff. And so that brings me to another critical reason for obtaining the CPA designation: job security. Becoming a CPA is one of the most recession-proof and pandemic careers out there. While changes in the economy tend to have a direct impact on many professions, money matters are often even more critical when the market isn't as hot. So this affords many CPAs much greater stability, regardless of what's going on in the world. And so given the current landscape, it's likely no surprise that the unemployment rates are an all-time high, but the awesome news is that CPAs are indispensable, and therefore the need for them is greater than ever. And so to add clarity to the chaos, many are turning to their CPAs as they grapple with these challenging times and attempt to navigate the available incentives, like how to restructure their organizations, how to move into more strategic planning, how to reorganize their products and all that stuff. They're turning to their CPAs for those solutions. And so as you can see, the need for CPAs is even greater in order to help organizations and individuals navigate all the changes and serve as their trusted advisor now and into the future. Now we're going to move over to the next slide and discuss the evolving roles of CPAs. It's never been a more exciting time to pursue the CPA license. The role of CPAs today has evolved. Procedures historically performed by newly licensed CPAs are now being automated, offshored, or performed by paraprofessionals. And now newly licensed CPAs are taking on new responsibilities that were traditionally assigned to more experienced staff. And these responsibilities require deep critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and a very high level of professional judgment. So becoming a new CPA at the entry level means that you're going to need deeper skill sets, more competencies, and a greater knowledge of emerging technologies such as data analytical tools. And so that's why the CPA licensure model is changing. And there's been significant changes in the accounting profession as well. And so in order to keep up with that change and adequately prepare students, the CPA Evolution initiative was developed. And Lori is going to be covering a little bit more of that in more details shortly. And so next, let's talk about the skills that you need as a CPA. What qualities and skills make a great CPA? I mean, there's been a lot of misconception around the profession on what skills are needed, but it's way more than math. Soft skills, which some people like that term, some don't, but soft skills are very, very important too. And the term soft makes them sound like they're less important, but I think they're equally as important as technical skills, even more so the further a CPA climbs up the corporate ladder. So essentially, as much as we need to focus on technical skills, we also need to make sure that our interpersonal skills are being developed. So often you hear of CPAs who are so good at what they do technically, but they don't have the personality or communication skills to sustain client relationships. And a lot of the CPA profession involves client relationships as well. That's a very big part of the profession. And so since the CPA profession is constantly evolving, it's imperative and important that we never stop learning. In fact, CPAs are required to meet education requirements as part of our license renewal process. Some of the skills we rely on are communication skills, creative problem solving, relationship building, leadership skills, critical thinking skills, project management, good judgment, big picture thinking, collaboration, and decision making, to mention a few. And so when you look at the list of these skills, you might not immediately think that they're accounting related or business related, or that they're skills beneficial in the field, but creativity, technology, problem solving, leadership, emotional intelligence are all important and necessary as a CPA, and something you should consider growing, because again, we're going to be dealing with people a lot of times. So I'd encourage you to broaden your scope and take advantage of any opportunities you find to add this to your list of talents. I find that a lot of these skills translate into my personal life when I'm even dealing with, friends and family. So I strongly encourage you, as much as we're developing our technical skills, let's also focus on developing those soft skills that would actually separate us from the crowd. And so Lori, feel free to chime in here as well.
Thanks, Bimpy. You've done a great job providing your perspective as someone in practice, or the auditor's auditor. I wanted to just reiterate the skills that newly licensed CPAs need. We recently, and I'm not sure how far along you all are in your education and how close you are to the CPA exam, but you might be familiar that new exam blueprints were effective on January 1st of this year. And they really reflect an increased emphasis on these skills, such as critical thinking and the ability to solve a complex problem by applying your professional judgment and skepticism, asking, what do you have? Is it correct? Are there missing pieces of information? How do you analyze whether there's information that contradicts what you've been provided? And understanding of business processes, which is really very important, especially as automation takes hold and some of the more routine, less complex tasks that historically entry-level or newly licensed CPAs would be working on, they're now being automated. So understanding systems and risks and how controls mitigate those risks is really important too, as well as understanding how to work with data and how to analyze data, look for anomalies and information that you're provided, and really understand what's happening in the business. And data can really provide you so much insight if you know how to use it. And then also with the companies that are outsourcing some of their business processes or information systems to third parties, the performance of system and organization control engagements is becoming more prevalent and is an area where CPAs are working, and that's an area that's growing pretty significantly in practice. So all of these things have been implemented and updated on the exam effective January 1 of this year, mostly impacting the current OD section and BEC sections of the exam. So let's talk a little bit of why CPA evolution. But before we do that, there's a poll question. So hopefully this time we're able to launch the poll and you guys can answer it and we can get some information. The question is, does your college promote the value of the CPA to its students?
So I'm not seeing any comments that people can't respond, so that's a good sign. I think it's working. All right, so we'll give everybody a few more seconds to answer and then we'll show the results. So if you haven't had a chance to respond yet, please do so now. All right, let's go ahead and end the poll and take a look at your responses. Awesome.
Great, so most schools do, that's wonderful.
Yep, and then just close the window, yep.
Okay, so why are we talking about the CPA license evolving and what is it going to mean? With the increased complexity in the market today and the use of technologies and the expanding knowledge base that newly licensed CPAs need to have in an ever changing and ever complex environment, the one-size-fits-all exam is starting to no longer make sense. We only have 16 hours of testing time, and the varying paths to CPA license. Some of the beauty of having a CPA license is you're not pigeonholed into one area of practice. So why have a one-size-fits-all exam? The new model will allow candidates to choose one of the exams that most aligns with their interests. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a future slide. But it really is an adaptive and flexible model, and it will allow for the CPA license and the profession to continually meet the needs of employers as well as the public interest. This has been a joint effort between NASBA and the AICPA, realizing that there's many avenues in the practice of public accounting and to evolve the licensure model to reflect the reality of practice. So what does that mean? I'm going to spend a good amount of time here because it's much different than what you might be familiar with today. So today, all students or all candidates, I should say, have to pass 4 sections of the exam. And it's the same 4 sections, regardless of what they want to do when they start working in the field. So today, a candidate has to take audit and attestation, which is known as AUD, financial accounting and reporting, FAR, business environment and concepts, BEC, and regulation, REG. Every candidate will take those 4 sections. under the new CPA Evolution licensure model, candidates will have to take 3 core sections. Every candidate will take those same 3 core sections, which is foundational knowledge and knowledge that everybody needs to know, regardless of where they expect to be going in the profession. And it's going to be an exam on accounting, 1 exam on audit, and 1 exam in tax. All CPAs will take the core. However, what's new and what is changing, and what's actually pretty exciting, is candidates will now have the opportunity to select 1 of 3 disciplines that aligns with their interests or where they think they might want to start their careers. Although it doesn't pigeonhole you into only practicing in that area. So you still will receive 1 CPA license, same as what you would receive today, and the rights, responsibilities, and privileges of having that license will not change under the new model. And it really does reflect the reality of practice. These disciplines are representative of the pillars of the profession. Think about business analysis and reporting if you're working in industry, in the controllership position, or if you're working on financial statement audits. Information systems and controls, that might be more for someone who is working in business and industry or in a firm and working to understand a client's information systems and business processes. And then tax compliance and planning, as the name applies, would be more for someone who's pursuing a career in tax. So it really gives candidates the opportunity to demonstrate deeper knowledge and skills in 1 of 3 disciplines. So you still have to pass 4 exam sections. However, you do have the choice under the evolution model to choose one of 3 disciplines. So what's changing with CPA Evolution? Let's start off with what's not changing, I should say. So today, the exam is designed to test someone at that 1 to 2 year level of experience, and that bar is not changing. That's the bar for licensure today, and that will be the bar in 2024 when this new exam is launched. Today, the exam is 16 hours. We don't expect that it will be more than 16 hours under the new model, and there won't be any new experience requirements necessary to sit for the exam. As I mentioned, candidates still have to pass 4 sections. 3 of them are core. They're all required of every newly licensed CPA, but then there's a choice of which discipline you'd like to take. Today, you can take the exam in any order you choose, and that will continue to be the case. If you start and you take the financial accounting and reporting core, and then want to move on to the business analysis and reporting discipline, you certainly can do that before sitting for the other core sections. So that really depends on your personal preference and your timeline and when you have time to study for certain things. So it's really flexible for your own individual circumstances. And there's no separate time limits to pass the core and discipline. Today, there's 18 months to pass all 4 sections, and that is envisioned to still remain the case under the evolution model. So I just want to kind of hit this home a little bit more just to make sure we're all on the same page. The core is the foundational knowledge that all CPAs need to know, regardless of where they expect to see themselves in practice. And it's going to be 3 core sections: financial accounting and reporting, auditing and attestation, and taxation and regulation. But candidates will have the choice to sit for and pass 1 discipline section to demonstrate that they have deeper knowledge and skills in 1 of 3 content areas, whether it be tax compliance and planning, information systems and controls, or business analysis and reporting. So we've been doing a lot of research at the exams team to be able to define the knowledge and skills required of newly licensed CPAs when they sit for and pass 1 of these 3 disciplines. This is a new model, so we're spending a significant amount of time making sure that we're being responsive to the needs of the profession. So currently, what might appear in each of these 3 disciplines For information systems and controls, that really is going to focus on understanding business processes, risks within the processes, and then the controls designed to mitigate those risks. A focus on information systems and IT governance, as well as information security, privacy, and confidentiality, which is very significant in this digital age. And think about the work that would be performed as either part of an IT audit or a SOC engagement. Moving on to the business analysis and reporting discipline, this is more going to be focused on data analysis and data analytics. How is the business performing based on the use of data to tell the story of how the business is performing and looking out for anomalies in the data. Financial risk management and planning techniques, some more advanced technical accounting and reporting topics that not all newly licensed CPAs might encounter in their first year or two of practice, unless they're, thinking about a career in business analysis and reporting. And then a specialized topic being state and local government accounting. Not every newly licensed CPA is going to be working in that area. So the specialized content has been moved over to a discipline. I do want to point out, though, that there'll be some very basic coverage of state and local government in the FAR core as it relates to the basis of accounting and the purpose of fund accounting, just so that every candidate has a general understanding of what it means to report for state and local governments. And then lastly, tax compliance and planning. This is more geared for candidates that want to take a career in tax, a tax path, and it'll cover more advanced individual and entity tax compliance and planning topics. Think of things that are a bit more non-routine and you wouldn't see unless you were working in tax, as well as some personal financial planning topics, as well as property transactions. So I know I gave you guys a lot of information. I think we're ready to, I'm going to ask, I'm not quite there yet, which of these disciplines might interest you? That's an upcoming poll question. But I want to also review the proposed timeline. So next year, in the beginning of next year, the plan is that NASBA will announce the transition plan. So meaning for candidates that are already in process of taking the exam under the current structure of 4 exams that everyone needs to take, if they're still in process, there will be a transition plan that is announced in the beginning of next year. We plan to announce the new CPA Blueprints January of 2023, and then launch the exam 1 year later. And that would give candidates, educators, review course providers time to update their materials and become prepared for the changes that will result from the CPA Evolution research that we're currently conducting. So, poll question.
So yeah, let's find out, based on learning about these 3 disciplines, which one interests you the most? And certainly you can change your mind between now and when you inevitably decide to test. All right, let's go ahead and see those responses as we finish up. Pretty split. Lori, is this surprising to you?
This seems to be pretty consistent with what we've originally, the original research we've done. About, I'm going to say at least 6 months ago by now, we did a similar poll of both college professors and students, asking them which discipline they think they would most likely take. And about half had selected business analysis and reporting, and the other half being split pretty equally between tax compliance and planning and information systems and controls, which was very close to this poll. So that's, at least it's being consistent. I guess it will only time will tell once candidates start sitting for the exams, if that still remains the case. Okay, Lauren, do you want to ask some CPA Evolution FAQs of us?
Yes, I do. All right. First, so Lori did mention before briefly, that this is an AICPA NASBA-led project. Lori, can you go into a little more detail about really who's making all this happen? How are we deciding the direction of CPA Evolution?
Oh, that's a great question. So what we're basically doing is we're working, before the CPA exams team even started working on defining the exam, there were over 3,000 folks across the profession that gave their input on the needs of the profession and how CPA Evolution might need to change, because the body of knowledge is ever expanding, and what's expected of newly licensed CPAs is becoming more and more earlier in their career. So folks are working on more complex situations earlier than ever before. So that work was done to define the model, which was led by NASBA and the AICPA, to make sure that the Evolution aligned exam meets the needs of the profession and recognizes that there is variety in practice, and therefore a one-size-fits-all CPA exam maybe is no longer as relevant as it used to be.
Okay, next slide. Thank you, Lori. Okay, so you touched on this before about the whole transition policy. So if someone starts testing, say like mid-2023, and they didn't finish yet, and then they have to continue testing into 2024 once the Evolution CPA exam has launched, how does that work?
That's a great question, Lauren, and one that very many people are eager to know. NASBA is currently working with the state boards of accountancy to develop that transition policy. And as I mentioned, it will be announced early next year. So please be on the lookout to make sure that you are familiar with what those transition policies will be. And they will be the goal at least is to be as least disruptive to the candidates as possible, to make sure that there's not creating any barriers to taking the exam and barriers to entry to become licensed.
So if someone's like a sophomore or a junior now, and they think, okay, I'll graduate in the next year or two, maybe I should hold off starting until January 2024. Is it going to, is there a point to that, or, start when you're ready pretty much? And
I would say start with when you're ready, and start sooner than later, because as you start working, I'm sure many of you are aware of that. Once you start working, your schedule becomes a little bit tighter. You don't have as much free time. So if you can pass as many sections as possible from the get-go, you'll be in a much better position. And then, there will be a recognition of which exams you've passed and what the policy will be. And I don't think, given the fact that that transition policy will be announced early next year, candidates will have plenty of time to plan and strategize which sections they want to take, and whether or not, what the best plan for them will be.
Okay, thanks, Lori. All right, next slide. Okay, so, say you take the core, those 3 sections that you're required to take, are you a CPA at that point, or, are the disciplines optional if you want to just sort of be a generalist type CPA?
Pimpy, do you want to take that one?
I was on mute over there. Sure, definitely. So completing a discipline is not optional. And so all candidates are going to be required to pass the 3 sections of the core and 1 discipline section to meet the exam requirements for licensure. And so you can actually choose a different discipline if you fail it and are still within that 18-month window required to pass all 4. So if you pass it and your credit expires due to not passing all of them within 18 months, you can switch your discipline.
Right, but I do want to point out that you can only pass 1 discipline to count towards your license. But don't fret, it will not pigeonhole you only in that area of practice, as long as you get the experience you need to fulfill your professional responsibilities in undertaking the work that you're qualified to perform.
Thanks, guys. Okay, and so, we polled you before and you gave your response, but really, how will you know which discipline to select?
That's a great question. And we did a survey of those same candidates, and we heard that mostly by the time someone is a junior, they feel pretty confident in which discipline they would select. And that might be based on the fact that that's usually when candidates have their internships and know kind of which avenue they're going to at least start their careers. And, as Bimpy experience showed, and as my experience showed, the great thing about having a CPA license is it opens so many doors, and there's so much need for the skill sets and the knowledge that CPAs have, that the possibilities and the opportunities are very varied and very wide. So there's never going to be a need, an unfulfilled need, I should say, because there's quite a large demand for the work that CPAs do in the business world.
I think, Bimpy, you mentioned before, say you decide on one discipline and you take it and you fail it, you take it again, you fail it. As long as you haven't passed a discipline, you could still switch to a different discipline, right? If the initial one is like, okay, this is just not for me, I can't pass it, let me focus on one of these other two.
That's correct. You can still switch your discipline, but as Lori said, you're going to be required to pass one discipline. You can't pass two disciplines. You still have to take 3 core, and you can pass one discipline, but you can switch your disciplines if you didn't pass one, like tax, compliance, and planning. You can switch over to business analysis and reporting.
All right, moving forward. Okay, so will candidates who become CPAs under this model be able to practice outside of their chosen discipline? And I know, Lori, you were mentioning that before about, if someone might feel pigeonholed.
Right. So that is a question that we've received a lot from candidates is, if I pass a discipline, does that mean I can only work in that area of practice? And the answer is no. You are going to demonstrate to your employer that you have a deeper knowledge, skill set in that chosen discipline. However, the CPA license that you receive is still one CPA license that gives you the rights, responsibilities, and privileges of today's CPA license. Currently, there is professional standards and ethical responsibilities that a CPA not undertake work for which they're not qualified to perform, and that still will be the guiding principle. But of course, you can gain experience working under the supervision of licensed CPAs to move into a new area of practice, and that's kind of how it's done today and will continue to be done in the future.
Okay, thank you. Will the value of the credential be any different once the new licensure process launches?
No, regardless of when you earn your CPA license, you're gonna have, kind of like what Lori said, you're gonna have the same privileges, have the same valuable credential as those who earn their license under the new CPA Evolution model. So one model isn't more valuable than the other. It's always gonna remain relevant whether you're taking it under the new model or the old model. Still the same rigorous, valuable content exam, basically.
Okay, so now we're going to get into how you guys now as students can start preparing. All right, next slide. All right, and we're going to allow, I think this is our final poll question. So very last one. Okay, we have 2 more. So we'll ask this one and then we have 1 more after this. So prior to today's webinar, how familiar were you with Evolution? Maybe you just heard of it, so you're a little familiar, or maybe you've read about it. Let's see. Okay. Not at all. Well, hopefully at the end of this webinar, you feel very or somewhat familiar, or certainly not at all familiar anymore. Okay, and then we have 1 more poll question. Which of the following exam resources have you checked out? Could even just be sort of taking a couple minutes to browse the website. So it doesn't have to be like thoroughly getting familiar with these resources, but at least, you know, you're familiar with them and maybe you've checked them out once or twice. Okay, and feel free to select all that apply. All right, let's take a look at those responses. Ooh, many of you have been on the AICPA website. That's fantastic. Okay, and then we've got a good share that have been to This Way to CPA, which is great because This Way to CPA, which is run underneath the AICPA, is specifically, you know, created and dedicated for you guys, for students and prospective CPAs. Okay, all right, moving forward, we're going to cover a few of these items. So the first one, which majority of you have been to, is the AICPA website. So regardless of when you begin testing, it's really best to familiarize yourself with the website and all the resources that are there. It really covers important exam topics and resources such as the content that's covered on the exam. Sample tests and tutorial videos are there, scoring and score release information. And if you ever have questions about really sort of, you know, how scoring works, or, you know, when are you going to get your scores, some people go on discussion forums or social media and ask, and maybe they'll get incorrect information. So it's best to always go right to the source, check for that information, especially around scoring. I don't know if you think that scoring is curved. It's not, just confirming that. We also have information on our site for international candidates, common exam, frequently asked questions, and, you know, access to the CPA Exam Blueprints, which we will speak to shortly. Okay, moving on to the next slide. This Way to CPA, which many of you are familiar with, and like I mentioned before, is fueled by the American Institute of CPAs. It's dedicated to providing resources and information for you guys, for the aspiring CPA. You'll find profiles of newly licensed CPAs, career paths, salary information, candidate reviews of review courses, which I know is huge, and access to tons of relevant articles and stories all about the accounting profession and CPA licensure path. And you'll also find links to register and attend webinars like these. Okay, moving forward. All right, so this is the Evolution page, which is updated regularly, and you can go right to the For Students and Candidates tab. It's evolutionofcpa.org. We will include a link to that. You can view a recorded webinar further explaining what CPA Evolution is. There's FAQs there. It's, like I said, it's updated regularly. And you can also, I think, sign up there if you haven't already with This Way to CPA to get regular communications about CPA Evolution. Right, moving forward. And these are just other resources that we recommend that you check out just to stay in the loop, stay updated on you know, what's going on in the profession, what's going on specifically about the CPA exam, resources to get you started, access to our exams team who are always happy to be part of these kinds of presentations. We have an exam candidate LinkedIn group with about 15,000 people right now. And that's really meant to be a discussion forum for candidates. You know, I myself go on there and post regularly updates. I promote webinars like this one, but it's really meant to be for you guys to share your insights and experiences going through the process. Then we have a podcast, take it with you on the go, subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts, with episodes ranging from, you know, common questions with NASBA to preparing for exam day. You know, we interview people with Prometric, to people who've passed and they've passed all 4 sections on their first attempt with a score of 95 or higher on each section. What was, you know, their secret sauce? What was their strategy? So the topics really range. And again, you can listen to it while you're out for a walk, or, you know, commuting to work or heading to class. This Way to CPA also has a really robust YouTube channel that we recommend you check out and subscribe to. This webinar, actually the recording of it will be placed there. All of our past webinar recordings are there as well. We have short little bite-sized videos there that showcase kind of frequently asked questions. So definitely recommend you subscribe to it so you get notified when new content is put up. And finally, joining your state society as a member gives you some really great perks, including showing potential employers that you're really serious about this profession. You want to get involved. You also want to network, you know, develop your leadership skills. And sometimes joining these state societies, they do offer discounts on certain review courses. And what we do know is that majority of candidates do use review courses. If you're wondering which one should I use, we cannot endorse any particular one, but we do know that like 90% of candidates use a review course, and many have great success with them. All right, moving on. All right, so I know Lori mentioned, yep, go ahead.
I was going to chat about the blueprints, Lauren.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
Okay. So one of the most helpful resources that the AICPA has for candidates is the CPA Exam Blueprints. And if you are going to be sitting for any of the exams, whether it's under the current model or the evolution model, we will have blueprints that are published. The blueprints under evolution will be published on January 1, 2023. So a little bit more than a year from now. But the current blueprints are also available at aicpa.org/exam blueprints. And what they do is they really provide so much great information about what content and what skills you'll likely see on the exam so that you can strategize your studying and really take a look to see how you might want to prepare. So for instance, we have something called representative tasks, and those representative tasks are meant to mirror what a newly licensed CPA would be expected to know or do in their jobs when they start in the profession. So we want to assess that content on the exam, and each representative task is assigned one of 4 skill levels. And a little inside information for you is that when you look at the skill levels, you can kind of get an idea of whether or not you're going to be asked a multiple choice question for that specific content area, or more likely you might be seeing a task-based simulation. So it's really helpful when you open those up to look at the task statements, make sure you're comfortable with those types of things, that you've prepared adequately to be able to do the things that are listed as representative tasks. And then knowing that typically, remember, and understanding an application level task statements are really always going to be assessed through multiple choice questions, whereas any analysis or evaluation task statements would be asked through more open-ended task-based simulations. So that really gives you so much information that's really helpful. And it'll give you a list of references that will support the questions that are asked on the exam, as well as how much of any given topic you might be asked to know or do on the exam. So it's really just very valuable when you're preparing to make sure that you are adequately prepared to sit for and pass the exam. And then Lauren was mentioning our sample test, which also is really a very great resource to candidates. And it's kind of like considering it a test drive. So you take away the test day nerves when you go into the Prometric Test Center, and you are already familiar with the user interface, because the software that's on our sample test is the exact same software that you would be using when you sat for the exam at Prometric. So you can go through. Sample test is not necessarily intended to prepare you for the content of the exam. However, it will prepare you for how to use the user interface, how to navigate between test questions, how to work with the authoritative literature, etc. And it'll also show you different types of task-based simulations and their response formats, so that you're not going into the test center unprepared and not knowing what to expect. So that's also very valuable for candidates who want to prepare themselves before stepping foot into a Prometric Test Center. So I think that's all we had. Are there questions that Bimpy or I can answer?
Yes. All right. So we did have some questions throughout that our trusty support staff and Mike and Kevin have been responding to, but here's one that they did send my way to ask of you guys. How does CPA compare against a different credential like an MBA or a CFA? Do employers see CPAs as just accountants or as broad financial professionals?
Do you want to take that one, and then I'll add my spin? I think it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say.
I think it depends. So, I mean, CFAs, what are CFAs? They're usually like investment professionals, they provide like investment guidance, portfolio management for individuals and businesses. And I know they usually work at investment firms, broker-dealers, insurance companies, pension funds, stuff like that. So this is my experience. And I'm not saying this is general across board. This is just my experience. So in my experience, I feel like CPAs have been exposed to that knowledge just by working in public accounting. Now, I'll use myself as an example. I've audited organizations who have like investment funds or provide 401k plans to their employees, or defined contribution plans, or benefit plans, or pension plans. And a lot of these funds are invested in the stock market, and these have to be audited. And so to audit those kind of investments, you have to have a working knowledge of how the stock market runs, because a lot of times you have to go onto like Yahoo Finance or some other resource to gather information about the various investments, historical performance, because we're dealing with historical data at this point. And so you want to pull a lot of that data to be able to perform your ratios in order to audit the investment. And so what I'm finding as a CPA is it's still the base, and as needed, CPAs add on other certifications like CISA, information systems, CGMA, CFA, CFP, the Certified Financial Professional Exam. And so I just feel like that's the base, and you can build on from there. So it really depends on the organization. I find that as a CPA, I can easily transition into forensic accounting. I did private equity accounting for a while, and a lot of the equity analysts in the private equity accounting firm I worked for all were CPAs. Some had CFAs, but a lot of them were CPAs because they felt like they needed that knowledge in order to finally understand how to do their financial analysis. Because at the end of the day, you're still dealing with finances. You're just dealing at it at the stock market level. And so even with wealth management, for example, I found people coming to me to answer questions about wealth management. How do I pay off debt? What kind of financial planning should I do for my children? What kind of college funds should I invest in? And I feel like these are, even though the CPA may not cover it broadly, I feel like I've touched on these every now and then, so where I can always go back, research it, and provide those answers. But I don't see how CFAs easily transition into the audit world without getting a CPA. It just doesn't happen. But I see it the other way around. I've seen so many CPAs move into, financial analysis, stock markets, pension funds, information systems auditing, and all of that.
I would agree with you, Bimpy, 100%. The opportunities and the varying opportunities, you can start your career doing one thing and move into something pretty easily with your CPA license that you might not be able to do as easily with one of those other credentials. CPAs are very marketable, highly in demand, and their skill sets and knowledge is widely interchangeable in different career paths.
Thank you, guys. I've seen a few questions come in around, if I do start testing in 2023, and then I have to continue taking, testing in 2024 once the newer exam launches. They had some specific questions about which sections should I take in 23? What would you recommend? Are the disciplines potentially going to change? And I know we're still a few years out, and we are looking to solidify quite a bit right now. But a lot of the questions I think we're going to start seeing is around that transition policy, right? And so unfortunately, we don't have all those answers right now. We're impatiently waiting on NASBA to release theirs. Because I think that'll address a lot of the questions that are coming up. But if you have anything else you want to add, Lori or Bimpy, on, if I do start in 23, any advice on approach?
I would just say that if you start in 23, you will have already known what the transition policy is. So it's unknown at this time, but only a matter of months before it is known. So take into account what those transition policies are. To kind of strategize which exam sections you'd like to take under the current model versus the new model. I will say there will be a hard cutoff. The exam as it is today will stop being administered on January 1st, 2024, and the new exam will be administered on January 1st, 2024. So we won't have dual testing available. But candidates will have more than a year to plan, what they want to do. So it's as least disruptive to them as possible. And I wish I had more information to share with you, but I know that NASBA isn't quite ready to announce, but we'll be doing so in the short term.
But for those of you who are asking, it's great you're being so proactive. So I'm not too worried about you guys. Probably when the time comes to it, you'll have all that information you need, and you'll probably already be opted in to receive communications about it. Just a quick note, anybody who's asking about, where can I get a recording of this presentation, or can I get the presentation deck? We aren't sharing the actual presentation deck, but you will be getting a link within the next couple of days to access this recording if you want to check it out on demand. It will be on the This Way to CPA YouTube channel. And final question here, because I think that might be it, is for Bimpy and Lori. Most of the people tuned in today, they're going to be getting started with the process in the next couple of years. Any just general advice or insights you want to share with them as they are about to embark on this big, valuable journey?
I would say don't be overwhelmed. People say, oh, CPA, it's so difficult, it's so hard. And yes, there is a bar that you need to pass to be sure that, the public protection that the exam is assessing what needs to, the knowledge and skills required to protect the public interest. But it's certainly very doable if you dedicate the time to carve out to prepare yourself. It's a short-term pain for a long-term gain, I would say. The process for me has been very worthwhile. I wouldn't be able to do what I do today, which I really do enjoy, without having those 3 letters behind my name. And, there's always the opportunity to do something different if you so choose. And I think that's one of the best advantages to the CPA license, is because there's so many doors open to you, and you can take different paths and start something new if you are starting to get bored or want to change of pace or whatever. That you'll have the opportunity to move pretty easily into different roles and responsibilities.
I'll say never give up. I didn't have a traditional path to obtaining my CPA. I felt like mine was more unconventional. And it took me 5 years to pass the exam, and I could easily have given up, but I didn't. And so I know, you come out of school and you hear about candidates who pass all exams on their first try. That was never my case. I took mine multiple times. So I don't want you to ever get discouraged if you're taking it and you see your other counterparts passing everything at the first try, and then you start thinking, well, maybe this is not the right path for me. Maybe I need to try something else. No, you don't need to. Keep at it, because I took mine while I got married, and then I had my kids, and I remember being 9 months pregnant and going to go take a test. And my husband thought I was crazy, and he's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, because I can't give up. I have to keep pushing. If I stop because I'm pregnant, then I'm probably gonna let it go. And so I took exams while I was heavily pregnant, because I knew that one day it's gonna come through, no matter what life throws at me. So basically, no matter what life throws at you, stick to it. It's worth it. It's just too valuable. And I even saw a question about, if you want to go into forensic accounting, they say CPA is not needed. It is. My mom was a forensic accountant, but she was a chartered accountant first, which is the equivalent of a CPA in my country. And so from being a chartered accountant, she started doing more extensive audit, and she was being called to serve as an expert witness. Well, that's forensics over there. And so all she did was add another layer of certification called a certified forensic accountant. But she was already doing that even before she became a certified forensic accountant, because again, it's more forensic is just more extensive audit that you present as evidence in a court of law. And so again, what's still the base? The CPA.
Perfectly said. And I hope this has inspired and motivated you guys, and most importantly, that you walk away, feeling, well informed and had any of your questions answered. But just keep checking back in for updates. You guys, most of you are probably still a couple of years away, and it's great you're being so proactive. I want to thank Bimpy and Lori for presenting today, and thank all of you for your time. Please be sure to fill out that quick survey as you exit out of here. Again, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you tuning in today.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Guys.